Section 17 of Warriors of Old Japan and Other Stories by Yei Theodora Ozaki. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Daikyu, The Princess of the Bowl, Part 1. Long, long ago, in old Japan, there lived near Katano, in the Kawachi province, a prince named Bichu no Kami Minetaka, or Lord Minetaka as we should say in English. He was not only a very wealthy man, but it was reported that his house was full of rare and wonderful treasures. He was also a learned man and the master of many accomplishments. His life was passed in the luxurious leisure of the rich, and he knew nothing of care or want. Perhaps he hardly realized what such words meant. But above all the treasures in his storehouse, beyond the wealth of his revenue, which came pouring in year by year in bushels of rice, he prized his only child, his daughter. The prince and his wife brought this daughter up with great love and tenderness, as if she were some rare flower or fragile butterfly. So beautiful indeed was the young girl that in looking at her, their friends and relations wondered whether the sun goddess Amaterasu had not come to earth again in the form of the little princess. Nothing came to mar the happiness of this united little family till the daughter was 15 years of age. Then suddenly the mother, who had never known a day's illness in her whole life, was taken ill. At first it seemed to be but a slight cold, but her health, instead of getting better, only grew worse and worse. She felt that she would never recover, and that her end was very near. So she called her daughter beside her pillow, and, taking a large lacquer bowl from the bedside, she placed it on her daughter's head, saying, "My poor little child, I want you always to wear this bowl. At your innocent age, you can understand nothing of the world in which I must leave you motherless. I pity you with all my heart. Ah, if you were at least 17 or 18 years old, I could die with more peace of mind. I am indeed loath to go, leaving you behind so young. Try to be a good daughter, and never forget your mother." The woman's tears fell fast as she spoke, and her voice was broken with sobs, while she stroked her little girl's hand. But things are not as one wishes in this life. All the doctor's skill could not save the mother. She died and left her daughter behind, motherless in the world. Words cannot tell the grief of the bereaved father and child. It was so great. At last, after some time had passed, and the ordinary routine of life in Prince Minetaka's household was resumed, the father noticed the bowl which his daughter wore on her head, and which fell so low as completely to hide her face, and calling her to him, tried to take off the unsightly headgear, but his efforts were in vain. All the retainers and then the servants were summoned to see what they could do, but no one could remove the bowl. It stuck fast to the child's head. No one could understand the mystery. The bowl had been put on most simply. Why could it not be as easily taken off? This was the question which the whole household asked again and again. And the young princess, besides sorrowing for the loss of her mother, was greatly troubled at the knowledge that, though born physically perfect, she was now quite disfigured for life in having to wear the ugly bowl which her mother, for some unknown reason, had placed on her head. If no one succeeded in taking the bowl off, she might have to wear it her whole life. That would indeed be a terrible affliction. But in spite of all, she never forgot her mother even for a moment, but carried in her heart the memory of her love and care through every hour of the livelong day. Every morning, as soon as she rose from her bed on the mats, she placed the little cup of tea and the bowl of rice before the tablet bearing her mother's name in the household shrine, and having set the incense burning, she would kneel and pray for the happiness of her mother's soul. The days passed into weeks, the weeks grew into months, yet the dutiful daughter never failed morning or evening thus to pray for her lost mother. In the meantime, the family relations often came to advise her father, Prince Minetaka, to marry again. "It is not good for you to be alone," they said. "Marry a suitable woman and entrust her with the keeping of your house and the care of your young daughter, who is now of an age when she most needs a woman's care." At first, Prince Minetaka would not listen to them. The memory of his dead wife was too fresh and his sorrow too keen for him to be able to lend a willing ear to their persuasion. He felt that it was a reproach to her he had loved, even to think of putting another woman in her place. But as the months went by, he found himself much tried with the affairs of the household, and was often so perplexed that he thought perhaps it might be better to listen to the advice of his meddling relations. So, without thinking much about the future, he decided to take a second wife. His friends were glad to find that their persuasions were of avail at last, and with the help of go-betweens, they arranged that he should marry a certain lady of noble family whom they deemed worthy and suitable in all respects. So the soothsayers were consulted, and a lucky day chosen for the marriage, and the new wife was then installed in Prince Minetaka's home amidst the congratulations of both families. The little princess alone was sorrowful in her inmost heart at seeing someone take her mother's place, but it would be unfilial to her father to show that for one instant she did not approve of his second marriage, so she hid her unhappiness and smiled. On seeing the little princess for the first time, the stepmother was shocked at the deformity of the bowl, and said to herself that never had she even dreamed that there could be any one in the world doomed to be such an ugly cripple. She not only despised but hated her stepchild from the moment that she saw her. This new wife was indeed a very different woman from her predecessor, whose heart was so good and kind towards all who came near her that the idea of disliking, much less hating anyone, was impossible to her. A year passed by, and the stepmother gave birth to a child. Jealousy for her own infant daughter now made her hate her stepchild more and more. It was her great desire to see her own daughter first in Prince Minetaka's affection, and in order to attain her utterly selfish end, she knew she must oust her stepchild from the house. To begin with, she determined to estrange the father from the little princess by telling him unfavorable stories of her behavior and her character. It is needless to say that she invented these stories. The bowl-wearing princess soon understood that her stepmother hated her. Her grief and anxiety seemed to her more than she could bear. There was no one in the house in whom she could confide, and she knew that to complain of her stepmother to anyone, even to her father, would be undutiful. What was she to do in her trouble? To whom could she go but to her own mother? So as often as she could, she went to her grave. Here she would kneel and pour out the woe that filled her heart. "O mother, why must I live on in the world with this ugly bowl on my head? My stepmother truly has a reason for hating such a child about the house. Now that she has a daughter of her own, all the more must she want to get rid of me. And my father, who used to love me so much, he too will surely soon give all his love to his new daughter and forget me. Alas, alas, the only place that is left to me to come to without fear of dislike is the side of my own dead mother. O mother, sitting upon the lotus leaves in paradise, receive me now upon the same leaf. Oh, that I might thus escape the sorrow of this world, and enter upon the way of Buddha." But the boundary of life and death separated the mother and child, and though she prayed earnestly and with tears, lifting her whole heart and soul up in her despair, no answer came to her eagerly listening ear. As she knelt in the little graveyard, only the sound of the wind sighing in the pine trees answered her. But the thought that she had told her mother everything comforted her as she returned home. The stepmother was told of her stepdaughter's frequent visits to the graveyard, and instead of being touched with pity for the motherless girl, she made use of the occasion to further to slander the child to her husband. "I am told that the bowl-wearer, your daughter, goes to her mother's grave and curses me and my child because of her jealousy. What do you think of that? Hasn't she a wicked heart?" Day by day she watched the little girl wend her way from the house to the graveyard, and day by day she repeated in her husband's ear her pretended fears. In her heart she knew quite well that it was only love and unhappiness that sent her unfortunate stepchild to the grave of her mother. At last she said that she was afraid of the evil that might befall her and her child through the bowl-wearer's malice. She had decided that they could no longer live together in the same house. The father, who had hitherto never listened much to his wife's tales, was at last persuaded by her importunity into believing them true. So, in an evil hour, he summoned his daughter and said, "What is this I hear, wicked daughter? Your deformity has long since been a source of irritation to me, but as long as you behaved well, I put up with it. Now I am told that you go every day to the grave of your mother to curse my wife and her innocent little child. It is impossible for me to keep under my roof any one who is so crippled, not only in body but in mind as you are. Go wherever you will from today, but longer in this house you shall not stay." While her father was speaking these terrible words, the stepmother sat behind him, smiling in derision at the poor little princess and in triumph at the success of her wicked stratagem. Woe to the bowl-wearing princess! The servants, at the command of her father, took off her silken robes and put on her a miserable common cotton gown such as beggars wear, and drove her out into the road. The princess was altogether bewildered at the suddenness of her misfortune. She felt like a wanderer in an unknown land, lost in the darkness of night. So distracted was she at first that she could only stand still in the middle of the street, not knowing which way to turn. But people passing by stared at her so that she soon realized that she must not stand like that all day, so she began to move whither her feet led her. In this way she came to the bank of a large river. As she stood and looked at the flowing water, she could not help thinking that it would be far better for her to become the dust of the river bed than endure the hardships of her present lot. Would it not be better to die, and so join her mother, than wander about like a beggar from place to place begging her rice? With this thought she made up her mind to drown herself, but the roar of the river was so great, as it dashed over the boulders of its rocky bed, that the maiden hesitated at first. Then, summoning up all her courage, with a desperate effort, she jumped in. Strange to say, however, the bowl, which had hitherto been such a curse to her, was now a blessing. It lifted her head clear above the water and would not let her sink. As she floated down the stream, a fishing boat came by. The fisherman, seeing a big bowl rising out of the water, lifted it up. His surprise was great when underneath the bowl he found a human being. Thinking it to be some strange monster, he threw it upon the bank. The poor girl was at first stunned by her fall. When she came to herself, she said that it was a pity she could not die as she had wished. She got up from the ground and, in a miserable plight, for her clothes were dripping with water, began to walk on, and after some time she found herself in the streets of a town. Here the people, as soon as they saw her, began to point the finger of scorn at her, and to jeer and laugh at the strange-looking bowl on her head. "Oh, do you see this queer creature with the bowl coming down from the mountains? Look, look!" Then, as some of them came nearer, they said, "It is strange that a monster should have such beautiful hands and feet. What a pity this creature was not born a woman!" Just then the lord of the district passed by on his way home from the hunt. Seeing the gathering of people, he stopped and inquired what was the matter. His retainers pointed out the bowl-wearer to him. From the grace of her slender form, the modesty of her bearing, Lord Yamakage judged her to be a young woman, though he could not of course see her face, which was completely hidden by the bowl. He ordered the bowl-wearer to be brought to him. 2 or 3 of his retainers went to execute his orders, and came back, bringing the poor unhappy princess with them. "Tell me the truth," said Lord Yamakage to the girl. "Who or what are you?" "I am the daughter of one Minetaka by name, and my home is near Katano. My mother, when dying, placed this bowl on my head, and since her death it has become so firmly fixed there that no one can take it off, and I am obliged to wear it always as you see me now. Because of the unsightliness of my appearance, I have been driven away from my home. No one takes pity on me, and I am forced to wander from place to place without knowing where to lay my head at night." "Well, well," said the kind man, "your story is truly a pitiful one. I will take the bowl off for you." When he had said these words, Lord Yamakage ordered his retainers to pull off the bowl from the girl's head. The men, one and all, tried to free the princess from the obnoxious bowl, but it stuck so obstinately to her head that all their efforts were useless. It even uttered loud cries and groans of pain as they tugged at it. Everyone was dumbfounded at the inexplicable mystery, and at last they all began to laugh. When Lord Yamakage saw that there was nothing to be done to help her, he spoke to the bowl-wearer again. "Where are you going to spend tonight?" "I am quite homeless," answered the bowl-wearer in a heartbroken way, "and I do not know where I shall lay my head tonight. there is no one in the wide world to take pity on me, and everyone who sees me either jeers or runs away because of the bowl on my head." Lord Yamakage felt his heart fill with pity and said, "It may bring luck to have such a strange creature in my house." Then he turned to the girl and said, "How would you like to come home with me for the present, bowl wearer?" And with these words he gave her in charge of his attendants, who took her with them to their lord's house. It was an easy matter to take her to the house, but not so easy to find her a place there. His wife objected to her becoming a waiting maid, saying that no one could bear the sight of so strange a creature about, so the servants at last took her to the bathroom, and told her that she must fetch and carry the water, and look after the fire for heating the bath. This was to be her work. As the little princess had never done such rough work in the whole of her life, she suffered much in obeying these cruel orders, but she resigned herself to her fate, and tried with all humility and patience to perform her hard task faultlessly. But her lot was far from being a happy one. Even though she had found the safe shelter of Lord Yamakage's home, the young and uncouth tradesmen coming on errands to the house made fun of her, some even trying to peep under the bowl to get a glimpse of the beautiful face beneath. While she was thus persecuted in the daytime, in the evening the servants gave her no rest with their peremptory orders. "Hot water here! Cold water there! Get the bath ready!" and so on. The poor girl bore all this rude usage patiently, but as she went about her work, she could not help remembering the old times of her happy childhood, spent under the loving care of her own dear mother, of the honored place she had held in her father's household till within the last few days, and as she carried the hot water or stoked the bath fire, she pretended that those fast-falling tears of sadness were caused by the fumes of charcoal and the steam which rose from the hot water. When she crept weeping to bed at night, it seemed to her as if the past day must be an evil dream. Lord Yamakage had 4 sons. The 3 elder ones were married to daughters of 3 of the leading men of the province. The youngest son, Saisho, was still unmarried. He had been away for some time in the gay smart capital of Kyoto, but now he returned to his home. Now every time he went to take his bath or called for hot water, he saw the bowl-wearing maiden, and as he had a kind and compassionate heart, he could not but be touched by her unhappy appearance, and her modest and gentle behavior, and her quickness and diligence at work. Whenever he had an opportunity, he spoke to the bowl-wearer, and to his surprise he found that she was no servant, that she spoke in the refined language of his class, and though so young, she was well read in the literature and poetry of her country, and could answer a literary allusion wittily and to the point. When at last she told him something of her sad story, he knew, though she did not tell him, that she belonged to some family of high rank. From this time on, he often spoke to the girl, and he found that the stolen conversations with her grew to be the chief pleasure of the day. One day he managed to take a sly peep under the bowl. The face, even though overshadowed by the huge cover, was of such rare beauty that he fell madly in love with the princess, and made up his mind that none other than the bowl-wearer should be his wife. His mother soon heard of Saisho's friendship for her husband's protégé, and when she learned that he had promised to marry her, she forbade him to think of such a thing. She at first thought that her son could not be in earnest, but when she sent for Saisho and asked him seriously If what she had been told was true, he answered, "I really and truly intend to make the bowl-wearer my wife." His mother was not a little angry at his determined front. How could Saisho fall in love with a girl with a bowl on her head? Who ever heard of such ridiculous nonsense? Then she sent for her son's nurse, the woman who had nursed him from the day he was born, and together they tried to deter him from his purpose. Saisho was obliged to listen to all they had to say, but did not answer them. He could not say yes to their demand that he should give up all idea of marrying the bowl-wearer, and he knew that he firmly said no, he would raise up such a storm of opposition that no one could tell how it would end. He knew that the life of the bowl-wearer was a truly pitiable one, and his determination to marry her and help her out of all her difficulties remained unchanged. His mother soon saw that her son would by no means listen to her persuasions, and her anger was great towards the bowl-wearer. She almost made up her mind to drive her from the house before her husband could know what happened. Saisho, on hearing this, told her that if the girl was driven away, he would go with her. The mother's distraction can be imagined, for she was thwarted in every way. She at last said that the bowl-wearer was a wicked witch who had thrown her spells over Saisho and would not leave him till she had compassed his death. She determined if possible to separate them by fair means or foul. For a long time she pondered over the matter, and at last hit upon a stratagem which she trusted would rid the house of the presence of the obnoxious girl. Her plan she called the comparison of the brides. She would hold in the house a family council of all the relations, and assemble the wives of her 3 elder sons, and before the whole gathering compare them with the bowl-wearer, whom Saisho had elected to marry. If the bowl-wearer had any self-respect, she would be too conscious of her deformity and her poverty, and too ashamed to make an appearance, would leave the house to escape from the ordeal. What an excellent plan! Why had she never thought of this before? So the mother sent messengers post-haste to all the family and relations, requesting their presence at a bride-comparing ceremony, and a feast which would close the ceremony. When Saisho heard of this, he was greatly troubled, for he knew what it meant. His mother meant to drive the girl he loved from the house by comparing her with his brother's rich and pretty wives. What was to be done? How could he help the poor bowl-wearer? The little princess saw how unhappy he was, and blamed herself. She was so sorry for him. "It is all because of me that this trouble has come to you. Instead of happiness, I have only brought you worry. Woe is me! It is better that I go away at once," said the girl. Saisho told her at once that he would never let her go alone, that if she went, he would go with her. At last, the day fixed for the ceremony of the comparison of the brides came around. Saisho and the unhappy little bowl-wearer rose before the dawn, and taking each other by the hand, left the house together. Notwithstanding his love for the bowl-wearer and his resolve to marry her at whatever cost, Saisho was very sad at the thought of leaving his parents in this way. He told himself that they would never forgive his obstinacy, and probably would refuse to see him again. So this parting was probably forever. He felt at each step as if his heart was torn backwards. With slow steps he and the bowl-wearer, hand in hand, wended their way down the garden. No sooner, however, did they put their feet outside the gate, than the bowl on the girl's head burst with a loud noise, and fell in 1,000 pieces upon the ground. What untold joy for both of them! Saisho, too, astonished to speak, looked for the first time full on the girl's face. The beauty of the damsel was so dazzling that he could compare it only to the glory of the full moon as it rides triumphantly above the clouds on the 15th night of September. Her figure, too, now that the dwarfing bowl had gone, was more graceful than anything he had ever seen. The young lovers, too happy for words at this unexpected deliverance, could do nothing but gaze at each other. End of section 17.